Hey Martin, speaking of Frazzle Drip, I do have a question. So your whole thing kind of got set off when Hillary Clinton tweeted about you. Is do you think that she has that this is like a common strategy by the Democratic Party and the Clintons generally, or?
It's funny you say that, and I try to be as sort of sober and, like I said, as little conspiratorial as I can be. I think that maybe it's an epiphenomenon. And so instead of like, oh, Hillary Clinton's important or is relevant or can, God forbid, is some kind of, Illuminati that, can get people canceled or deleted or killed even or prosecuted or whatever. I actually think she's sort of more of a signaling apparatus where, and it's nothing to do with her. It's more about like she's a sign of bureaucratic authority and, for lack of a better term, goals for a lot of people. Like to be somebody who's sort of a relative nobody and then becomes Secretary of State or a senator through sort of politics is the life goals of hundreds of bureaucrats, or millions, I should say, of bureaucrats. And like, so somebody disrespecting her, it's less about her, you're disrespecting the process that they have all decided to go down. And these are judges, prosecutors, lawyers of all kinds, politicians of all kinds, often lawyers in the first place. So you're sort of messing with a whole tribe of people, whether it's right or left or whatever. And I think that, when you sort of put your middle finger up to authority and say, I don't really care about your so-called authority, I don't think you have any authority, you're sort of basically asking for them to prove that they still do and that they can do something to you. And from my naive perspective of like, well, she's not elected, right now she's trying to become the president, but what difference does that make? I can still tell her to fuck off and tell her that she's a bitch if I feel like it. And I think there was this sort of like, oh, we can't have somebody doing that to authority. And it's like, I don't know, it's this sort of weird synthesis where there's this merger of the courts, which are actual authority, right? The courts can put you in prison. The courts can force you to do something. But also not just the courts, but the people that appoint the judges. It's sort of this interconnectedness, which I never sort of thought existed. And maybe I'm just naive and stupid. But I always thought they're, kind of the stuff that we were taught, which is, well, we have three branches of government and they're separate and this and that. And I've sort of come to learn that, it's kind of one government with three, to call them separate branches is probably a bit far. They're relatively more interconnected than maybe we think. And there's a lot of sort of branch hopping from one to the other. And I think you're right that there's this temporal association with sort of fucking around with politicians and watching sort of different bad things happen to me. But, I still hope and hold out some, again, pathetically naive hope that that's sort of all just a coincidence.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because they did the same thing with Jones, Alex Jones. She tweeted out that he's Trump's right brain, and then it was about a week later that the parents of the San Diego family showed up at a lawyer's office and filed lawsuits 7 or 8 years after it happened.
She did it with this policy attacker narrative too.
As much as I don't like her, I still think there's this, it's beyond her, right? It's,
Yeah.
It's just any kind of authority that people want to show is not the authority. That's a direct challenge to keeping that authority. So you have to put down that rebellion whenever and wherever you can.
I tend to wonder about that.
I really like the point you made about that because it's the thing about it's a threat to the process of ascension that they've all sort of wedded themselves to, all these bureaucrats. And I think that's why there's like this cacophony of the whole echo chamber with the narrative that comes up. I thought that was astute. Thank you.
Well, look at Trump. I mean, he's the exact opposite of what they, you're supposed to pay your dues. You're supposed to, the fastest you're supposed to do is someone like Kennedy or Obama, where, okay, you're a political phenom or AOC, you're going to get popular, but hey, kid, you're still going to pay your dues. It's look how patronizing people are to AOC when, she's doesn't have much technical power on paper, but she's arguably one of the most popular politicians ever. I don't like her policies, but one can't disagree that she's popular and a mover and a shaker. But there's still that patronizing in the House and the Senate of, oh, you just got here. we're the old heads, and I don't know. It sickens me, and I'm happy, even though I don't like Trump, from his like obvious like intellectual deficiencies and like lots of other problems he has. Like at least he's not part of this horrible, stupid system, and like it's almost like the poison you know is better than the poison you don't.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, like, just the last comment on Hillary specifically. I thought it was interesting during the Trump administration, or when she was running against him, and if you watch the tweets, because this whole Russia narrative is unwound, you can kind of see behind the curtain. It seems like she got a heads up on the Alpha Bank narrative that she fed the media and then tweeted out something. So I wonder if, like, a lot of that, what looks like her tweeting and then things happening, is that she knows that something's going to happen in the background. Like she knew that they were going to go after you, and so she made you a target. Or with Jones, she knew they were going to start going after him, so she made him a target. Same with like Trump and the Alpha Bank stuff.
I guess the only thing I'm happy for is that reason prevails among the populace, and that she lost, and that the biggest embarrassment of losing to Trump is like, you really couldn't be more embarrassed as a politician. And, somebody that is so flawed and so, not good at politics, or shouldn't be on paper the winner, beat the crap out of her. And it's so delicious. Again, not maybe great for the country. We probably could have found somebody better than Donald Trump, but like, fuck her, Like, I think that's the general, like, message for a lot of people. I gave up on her and gave up on politics in general when like this is the choice we have. People like her and other sort of lifelong bureaucrats that, I mean, there are people that respect people like that, and others that dedicate their lives to quote unquote public service, which is amazingly lucrative. Evidently, this public service. I should think about getting into it. I didn't know you can make hundreds of millions of dollars as a public servant.
Yeah, yep, you can.
I think crypto, I mean, whether it's Bitcoin or whatever else, I think that, it is really an existential threat for some politicians. And I think that the on-ramp, off-ramp stuff is sort of the funniest thing I've ever seen, because you have the sort of Bitcoin people sort of trying to defend the fact that they're trying to make a business out of this, and then also sort of like negotiate and work with governments. And I don't know how people feel about like the Winklevoss, for instance. I read this book in prison called Crypto Dad.
We called him the Winklevi.
The Winklevi, right. I read this book in prison called Crypto Dad about Commissioner Giancarlo, who I think I'm gonna work with him and his law firm to help me a little bit. But like this sort of like weird like compromise of like let's let Bitcoin either be regulated, or like this sort of pseudo-regulation that occurs at the on-ramp, off-ramp level. I don't know how people feel about that, but it's like such a strange thing to me, and I don't know.